Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
Today's gospel, our Lord mentions the reality of hell. And in the book of entitled The Threshold of Hope, St. John Paul II was once asked, why is it that in the church there is less emphasis, it seems like less emphasis on the last things, so the reality of the last things, and especially, and in a particular way, the reality of hell. And St. John Paul II gave a very interesting answer, saying that contemporary man is insensitive to the last things, especially the reality of hell, because he gives two reasons. The first one is because of the widespread secularism. So there is the reality, there is no afterlife, there's only this reality, right? Secularism. And he gives a second reason, and he says, because of the horrors of the 20th century, because of the horrors of the 20th century, man is in a certain sense desensitized. He asks himself, is there something worse that can happen or take place, right? So he's desensitized. So secularism and the horrors of the 20th century. There's no other ideology that embodies both the horrors of the 20th century and secularism than Marxist communism. Marxist communism. The year 1917 is very important to understand our present times today. We know 1917, October 13th, was the culmination of the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. The miracle of the sun took place. October 13, 1917. Just a couple of weeks after, what took place after that? The Communist Revolution, right? And a couple of months before that, on July 13, 1917, Our Lady said that if my requests are heeded, then Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, then Russia will spread her errors. Russia will spread her errors throughout the whole world, and there will be wars and persecution of the church. It's so important to understand that when Our Lady is speaking about the errors of Russia, the errors of Russia are not errors that are confined to a particular country or a particular system, political system. She was referring to the errors of Marxist communism. And in fact, 20 years after the apparition of Our Lady of Fatima in 1917, so 1937, Pope Pius XI comes out with an encyclical. Get this, an encyclical to warn the entire Catholic Church about atheistic communism. So here, the Holy Father is warning the entire church about this ideology, and he calls it by name. He says it is a false religion. Communism is a false religion, and its entire doctrine, he says, is undergirded with the principles of what's called dialectical materialism. So, when it comes to communism, the dynamics of communism is based on dialectical materialism. What is that? Materialism. So for them, the worldview, there's only one reality, this world. There is no afterlife. It's only this world, materialism. And since there's only this one reality, this world, then there is this certain dialectic, the dynamic, which consists of a law where there is, to arrive at progress, the law, according to dialectical materialism, is that there has to be contradiction, conflict, to move things forward. Right? So this is dialectical materialism, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And we see this in different forms. That's why it's so important to understand that the errors of Russia are not confined to a country or to a political system, because the dynamics of dialectical materialism presents itself in different forms today. There's no longer male or female. To progress, you need contradiction, you need conflict, and hence transgenderism. And we see this all over. And as Pius XI points out, the fundamental aim is to upset the divine order, Christian civilization, and to overthrow the social order. So there's many different forms, but essentially the same and the same objectives. To build and to try to build paradise on earth, which is an illusion. Benedict XVI calls the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima prophetic. Prophetic. Do you know what that means? It doesn't simply mean knowing the future. No. St. Thomas of Aquinas would say, prophecy, especially after the apostolic age, pertains to the guidance of human actions in a particular time in history. So here we have the Mother of God who guides the actions of her children for what? To triumph over the serpent. Beneath all of the political things that are going on in the world, there's a deeper conflict. The conflict that we find in Genesis 3:15, the woman and her seed, and the serpent and his seed. But we already know who triumphs. The woman and her seed crushes the head of the serpent. And Our Lady of Fatima guides, gives, so to speak, the game plan of victory. The church triumphant communicates to the church militant and gives the game plan for victory. If my requests are heeded, there will be peace. We celebrate a memorial or a votive mass in honor of Our Lady of Peace. Let us heed her message. Stop offending God. Stop offending God. Pray the rosary every day. Offer up sacrifices. Live your consecration to the Immaculate. These are the tactics for triumph, and all of us can do this. You see, before we engage in any type of political engagement, again, we have to remember there's a deeper battle, deeper warfare, spiritual warfare between the woman and her seed and the serpent and his seed. It's so interesting how Our Lady of Fatima precedes the communist revolution. Our Lady is always ahead of the serpent. She's always ahead of the serpent. She always crushes the head of the serpent. Let us heed her message. Let us heed her message, and let us ask her for that peace that we need in this world, but most importantly, the peace that we need in our own souls, that her Immaculate Heart may triumph. Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now